former National Security Advisor Dr. Brzezinski, whose conversations with Brent Scowcroft on the future of American foreign policy can be found in the book America and the World. Dr. Brzezinski, welcome. Or as your grandchildren call you Chief.
Yeah.
So they do.
And why should salute him.
I should. Yeah. Why did they call you Chief? I'm going to have my future grandchildren call me Chief.
Someone gave me a sweatshirt which had the words Chief on it, and they said to me, "Should we call you Chief?" And I said, "Of course, why not?"
Yeah.
It works. Well, let's talk about obviously what the world is focused on right now, and that is the Israel-Palestinian conflict, something obviously that you helped make great strides on back in '78. Here we are in 2008, and it seems as intractable as ever. What does Barack Obama need to do coming into office to open a new chapter in the peace process?
Well, he has to be aware of the fact that by now it must be eminently clear to everyone that the parties to the conflict will never reach an accommodation on their own. I mean, if we haven't learned that after all of these years, and after all of the suffering that the people involved have been exposed to, then we'll never learn. And, you know, we're dealing with a very serious problem right now. It's a problem which has a moral and a political dimension. The moral dimension is illustrated by the front page photograph on today's Washington Post. There are two women shown there. One is an Arab woman who is grieving because she just lost 4 daughters.
5, actually.
Or 5 in the bombing. Her daughters. And there's a grieving Israeli woman because there was a Hamas rocket that hit the town in which she lives, and she's being consoled by a policeman. Well, we can't be indifferent to that. You know, the Hamas people have provoked Israel, there's no doubt about it. And they have harassed Israel, there's no doubt about it. But does that mean that the punishment has to be on that scale? 400 killed, 1,400
what would you recommend?
1,400 wounded. Well, I would certainly recommend a process by which you limit such casualties and limit them very significantly.
How do you do that in an urban area?
Then you don't do it.
So if Jimmy Carter came to you in 1979 and rocket fire was being lobbed into upstate New York from Canada, would you tell Jimmy Carter to ignore that?
No, but I wouldn't tell him to go ahead and kill 400 Canadians and wound 1,400 more, especially if this rocket fire hadn't killed anyone. You know, until this incident broke into the open in the last few days, that firing of these rockets was provocative, annoying, it was harassment, but it wasn't lethal. So you have to be aware.
Did you wait until a Hamas rocket lands in the middle of the school and kills 400 Israeli children before you act?
First of all, you know, how likely is that? It was going on for months and months and months. I think there are many ways of dealing with that problem. One would be to seize the territories from which the rockets emanate. Apparently, it was one of the more radical groups that Hamas was tolerating. And I agree, Hamas is responsible politically for what has happened. But still, there has to be a sense of proportion. Because if there isn't, then one has to think of the consequences. What, in the light of what has been happening, are now the prospects for a genuine accommodation between the Palestinians and the Israelis? What kind of emotions does it leave behind? Where does it leave the Palestinian Authority, which is modest, which is trying to negotiate with the Israelis, and the Israelis are negotiating with it? Where does it leave it? It makes it look like a bunch of quislings and satellites. Look at the impact of all of this on those governments that are helpful to the peace process, like Egypt, Jordan. Are they being helped by this? Are they being undermined? Look at the attitude of the Arab masses in the Middle East. Are they being radicalized? Look how Iran is beginning to benefit from all of this. You know, political consequences, moral consequences have to be weighed very carefully.
And let's look at the international community for a minute, because this does happen time and again. You can have Hezbollah firing rockets into northern Israel, provoking a response. Israel overreacts in the eyes of the world community. The same thing happens here. At what point does the United Nations, though, step in earlier, before the Israeli response, and other international organizations step in, aggressively condemning Hamas Hezbollah for firing rockets into Israel? Because we never get the response from the world community, it seems. It certainly doesn't make it on the front page of the newspapers until Israel responds to the initial attack. And at that point, it's too late.
I wouldn't hide so much behind the international community, because what is the international community? It has some collective weight, but it really doesn't have any real influence. I think what we have to ask ourselves is, what have we done to bring about peace between Israel and the Palestinians? And look at the last 8 years. We have relied on force. We have stopped being the mediators. We have become very partial. And we have essentially observed the situation as it deteriorates.
We're going to have another block, and we can talk about that. But I want to go back, though, to the question. What do we do the next time Israel is attacked from an outside force? What do we do at that point?
That's the wrong question.
No, that's not the wrong question, because we never get the condemnation of Hamas or Hezbollah. It's always after Israel responds to defending itself.
No, it's not. The problem is that this conflict has lasted for years, and the United States has been largely passive. So the right question is not what do we do when things break down. The right question is, what do we do to avoid a breakdown by being engaged seriously in the peace process? And for the last 8 years, we haven't been. And that's why we have the mess like we have right now in our hands.
You can't blame what is happening in Israel right now on the Bush administration.
Yes, you can.
No, you can't. Well, let's go back to 2000, Dr. Brzezinski. You and I both know Bill Clinton gave Arafat and the Palestinians everything they could have wanted.
Such a stunningly superficial knowledge of what went on that it's almost embarrassing to listen to you.
Oh, is it?
If you were to look more closely at what happened in the Clinton-Camp David discussions, you would know that we have just said is absolutely wrong. There were all sorts of provisions and catches to the so-called proposal, and it wasn't rejected. The negotiations went on in Taba, and then there were elections in Israel, and Sharon came in, and everything got aborted. In the last 8 years, we had a policy in which we have proclaimed an interest in peace. Condi Rice has traveled 16 times in 21 months to the region, proclaiming, you must do this, you must do that, but the United States never exerted itself. So the issue that Obama faces, and that's a question that you raised, is, are we going to be sitting there issuing condemnations, whether it's of Hamas or Israel or anybody else, or are we going to be seriously engaged in the peace process? That is the question.
We have another block, and I'm very excited about that because I'm stunningly superficial. Chief, I look forward to you educating me and the rest of America, the rest of America and the rest of the foreign policy community who have said time and again, Arafat walked away from the best deal he could have got, and that the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
You're repeating slogans. You're repeating slogans. He did not walk away. What he said was, I'm going to take the proposal to all of the Arab capitals and see how they react, because the proposals were controversial. And then negotiations went on, even after Christmas, where Clinton and Arafat met, and they were going on in Taba in January, after Clinton was already leaving office, and then the process got aborted. It's helpful to know a little bit about it.
It's very exciting, Chief, that you know things that the rest of the international community doesn't know.
You're going to judge your knowledge by the sort of collective standards of 300 million people. Then don't be surprised that you're embarrassed.
I'm not embarrassed. I read the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Foreign Affairs. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw those away, and anytime I have a question, I'm going to call you up.
Let me spell it to you. TABA, Taba negotiations. Look them up. It will be helpful.
I'll do that, and I'll throw out papers and Foreign Affairs and everything else I read. All right.